Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Kathy Roth-Duquet, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Blue Star Families. Blue Star Families is a national nonprofit dedicated to supporting active duty, Guard, and Reserve veterans and their families from all ranks and services. I'm joined today by Matt Boren, the Executive Director of ADC. Welcome, Matt. To kick things off, would you like to tell folks a bit about ADC and CMSI?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I appreciate that. For over 40 years, the Association of Defense Communities has been supporting the resilience of communities and states that support America's military. With nearly 300 communities, states, regions, and affiliated industry organizations, ADC represents every major defense community and state in the nation. We're really proud to partner with Blue Star Families on the COVID-19 Military Support Initiative. This initiative is meant to provide resources and expertise to support communities, states, and military families throughout this crisis, including hosting events like today. We also have a daily newsletter and a website that was launched last week that can serve as a resource repository. This work would, of course, not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. The initiative is powered by Booz Allen Hamilton, along with significant support from USAA. I also want to recognize Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation, the Association of Military Banks, the Military Housing Association, Hunt Companies, J.P. Morgan Chase and Company, and First Command Financial for their contributions. And with that, I'll turn it back over to my battle buddy, Kathy.
Thanks so much, Matt. I want to also recognize the coalition of nonprofits, government friends, and corporations who've been participating, joining forces. Many of them are speaking on the town hall today and have been speaking on other town halls. This is truly a collaborative effort across a broad swath of people. Under this initiative, we've been conducting a pain points poll to gauge the greatest challenges military families are facing in real time in light of this COVID-19 pandemic. We're continuously analyzing the data as policy changes and developments roll in. A link to the full poll will be in your post-webinar email. Please take a minute to take the poll itself or share it with your contacts, and just a brief update on the current data. We've had over 2,500 respondents analyzed so far. We will shortly be analyzing the next round, which brings our respondents up to 3,200. These are primarily members of military families, service members, and spouses. 14% are veteran families. I want to give a brief highlight to some of the keenest, most acute pain points. We see that 41% of active duty members and a third of military spouses show concern about their service members' units continuing to train despite exposure concerns. We see 62% of caregiver respondents unable to have continuity of care for their special needs child, and a dip in the amount that respondents are able to care for their mental health. We'll be addressing mental health in our April 23rd town hall meeting. The most acute pain points among transitioning service members are as follows: their inability to complete the necessary steps to transition out of service, i.e. their inability to get medical appointments due to the crisis, and their inability to file or complete VA processing due to the crisis. So that's what's come back from our survey. We also see a lot of veteran correspondents who've lost their job, are unable to work, and have reduced their hours as a result of the crisis. And that, of course, is affecting our recently transitioned veterans. We're going to move on to the panel, and we do want to get to your questions. When you have a question, please use the chat page on the forum. We'll collate those questions and get them to the panelists, and those we're not able to get to, we will provide answers for on our website. I'd now like to get started with our first panel. Our goal for this first panel is to define the economic and employment landscape and its impact on military service members and their families preparing to transition from the military to civilian careers. Our panelists will also discuss the benefits of delaying transition. Our panelists are Eric Eversole, President of Hiring Our Heroes and the organizer of today's panel. We appreciate Eric for playing that role. Maureen Casey, Chief Operating Officer for the Institute of Veterans and Military Families. Mike Miller, Director of Private and Public Engagement, DoD Defense Personnel and Family Support Center, and Laura Schmiegel, Head of Military Affairs, Booz Allen Hamilton. First, I'd like to give each of you a minute to tell us about the important work you do. And I'm going to ask you to be as concise as possible so we can move on to questions. There will be more information about each of these organizations on the CMSI website. Eric, if I could ask you to kick us off.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy, and thanks to you and what Blue Star families are doing for our service members and their families during this COVID-19 crisis. Hiring Our Heroes is a national grassroots nonprofit that has over the years worked aggressively to help transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses find meaningful employment opportunities. We started, of course, during the last employment crisis back in 2011 when we were seeing widespread veteran unemployment. We've made a great deal of progress since then, putting structure and programs in place to help service members, especially transitioning service members and family members, find employment opportunities. And as we have seen with this current COVID-19 crisis, those economic challenges are right around the corner. They've already started in many instances for many folks, and we believe that working together as national, private, and public sector partners, we're going to get ahead of this one in a much better way than we did back in 2008. And looking forward to discussing those with you today.
Thanks, Eric. And I know my own husband, as he was transitioning out, used the Hiring Our Heroes resources, and they really are terrific. Maureen?
Kathy, thanks. And I want to echo Eric's appreciation to everyone for this opportunity and all the work that's being done by this growing consortium to address this growing pandemic and its impact. The Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University was founded in 2011 through the generous support of our founding partner, JPMorgan Chase. And we are uniquely positioned in that not only do we do the research and analytics work that you would expect at an institute situated at a university of higher education, but we also do direct program service delivery, and that we deliver and offer free programs and services to transitioning service members, veterans, and their spouses and families in the areas of career preparation, employment, and we also do a great deal of community-based work. We've been very fortunate during this time that many of our programs and services are offered online, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maureen, and we're so proud to partner with you on each of your excellent areas. Mike? Maybe having a problem with Mike's audio while we wait for that. Laura, could you join us? Could you present next, please? Okay. While we're waiting to straighten that out, can I invite Eric, you to start us off by providing a high-level overview of the economic outlook.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. And I think that obviously from an employment perspective, from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's perspective, we are obviously focused on two curves. The first curve is really the healthcare curve related to COVID-19, and how do we start to flatten out the curve and really focus, like I think most organizations, on making sure that our people and communities are safe and healthy. But the second curve, and I think the point of today's meeting and call is that second curve and focusing on the economic recovery and how we get back to business as usual in this country from an employment perspective. And we, I will tell you, there's different models on this, but from our perspective, we are really focused on making sure that we prepare transitioning service members and their families for an economic recovery that we believe is right around the corner. Now is a time frame not to retreat or to really go in a different direction, but it is a time frame in which there's an opportunity here to really focus and hone in on your training skills and your skill sets, so that when we come out of the coronavirus curve and we get into the economic recovery curve, that we're best positioning our constituents, our service members and their families for the economic opportunities that are right around the corner. I do think that the situation today is in many ways much different than what we saw back in 2008 as a result of that economic crisis. And importantly, so I think the economic situation is much different now, which I think will certainly help with a much quicker recovery than we saw in 2008. But I think importantly, evidence based on all the people you have on this call and the other speakers, we're in a much different position as a military community and as a private and public sector community to help service members and their families find those meaningful opportunities. Think about the structures and programs put in place in the last 9 years. Those structures are strong. We're ready, willing, and able to help. And I think that's going to bode well for that second curve that I've been talking about and really help those service members and their families navigate some near-term challenges, but ultimately find that long-term economic opportunity they so richly deserve.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Eric. Maureen, what are you seeing at IVMF as service members and spouses prepare for transition at this unusual time?
Thanks, Kathy. I think what we're seeing based upon the data, but I also want to echo what Eric just talked about, which is what the experience of the last 9 years has taught us. I think it's going to be really important as we look at this data that we're really just starting to get, but we look at it in the context of the other things that we've learned. And I also think it needs to be looked at in the context of we can be learning all of that, but we need to be sure that we have the opportunity and the vehicle to make our transitioning service members, spouses, and their families informed consumers about all of the opportunities that are available to them. I think all of the great work that we've been doing over the last number of years has made a significant improvement, but I think there's more work that we can do there to share what the opportunities are. And just to echo a few of those, right, I think one is the data is telling us that a veteran is not a veteran is not a veteran. We need to take a much more tailored and nuanced approach with each subgroup. So we have to look at transitioning service members, look at those that are educated and some of those that are younger and less educated and a little more financially less stable, and what are the unique programs and services we need to develop for them versus those that are more educated and better positioned to make a more direct transition. I think we need to look at veterans that are already in the workforce. We talk about the post 9/11 veteran, but we have to keep in mind that some of them have been in the workforce now for 10 or 12 years. And so there's going to be some unique challenges that we need to address with regard to those that might be displaced in the workforce. And then of course, we can't forget our military spouses and some of the unique challenges that they have had and continue to have. And I think we were just starting to make some progress there in addressing some of their concerns over the last few years. And we're really going to need to stay focused on that. I would echo Eric's points around the partnerships, public-private partnerships that have already been built. I think, a shout out goes to JP Morgan Chase for sustaining the efforts of the Veterans Job Mission. There is a ready coalition of employer partners who have already recognized the value of hiring veterans. Eric has done the same thing at the Chamber. And so we need to make sure that we are leveraging those to identify the opportunities that are there quicker, faster, and better. I think we need to look at the training and credentialing that's been put into place online and that's readily available. One of those is the program that we have at the Institute, Onward to Opportunity. It's online, there's 50 different learning pathways, it's free to both transitioning service members and their spouses, And not only are you going to get that training and credential, but we're going to connect you to a network of employers. And so it's looking for those opportunities that create that end-to-end solution. And I also think another thing the data tells us is that at times of economic, when there are issues with the economy, folks turn to higher education or leveraging their educational benefits. And so the data tells us that the emerging fields are in education, healthcare, sustainable energy. There's a lot of colleges and universities over the course of the last few years, like Syracuse University, that have made a dedicated effort to building programs and services for the military connected community. So again, we have to make sure that we get that information into the hands of the folks that need them. And then I think just one final point, as we talk about employment opportunity, I don't think that we can lose sight of small business. Again, the data tells us that veterans and spouses are overrepresented in small business ownership. And so not only do we need to make sure that we have the programs and services available to ensure that they can recover in this time of economic turmoil, but that we're keeping them informed about what the opportunities are if they are thinking about small business ownership as a potential vocation. And the IVMF, Bunker, and others are doing that. So again, look to the IVMF website, all of the resources that are provided through here to make, so that we're trying to make folks informed consumers.
That's great, Maureen. Thank you. And Mike, I'm so delighted you're with us. I wonder if you could give us a brief overview of your office and also tell us a little bit about the current state of transition across the military and what we can expect in coming months.
Oh, it'd be my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. So I'm from the Defense Personnel Family Support Center, but more importantly, that's the office that manages the Transition Veterans Program Office, the Transition Assistance Program, Employer Support to Guard and Reserve, Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Program, all three of those directly related to this transition space and the service member space. We also have two other programs, the Federal Voting Assistance Program and the Computer Electronics Accommodation Program, that serve our service members but aren't really germane to this conversation. So quickly into the transition space. The current outbreak is dynamic, as we all know, and it's manifesting itself differently by location, setting, population, and even down to the individual level. What we're doing at DoD is actively monitoring and tracking that impact that it's having on TAP for our annual transition population of those 200,000 service members that are transitioning out at 185 locations across the globe. Now, what we recognize is that this is a unique challenge. So all those brick and mortar classrooms, all the things we were doing had to change. So across the military departments, the first thing to recognize is that the TAP classes have been moved to a virtual environment. And that's a good thing, obviously for the separation reasons that we're all very familiar with. But at the same time, all of the congressionally mandated requirements for TAP are still being met across the services, whether it's through the use of virtual platforms, our curriculum we have on Joint Knowledge Online, or other virtual interactions, whether it's telephonic support, virtual meetings, or all types of variations. So our services and our executors down at the installation levels are doing all types of amazing, different innovative things to find ways to get these critical services out there. And that includes our partners from labor, our partners from the VA, our partners from the Small Business Administration, to ensure that those career readiness standards are met. And then what that really talks about, it leads to what happens if it isn't met, or if they're met but not to the degree a service member is looking for. Well, each one of the departments has taken and developed processes so that an individual who's affected by this situation can in fact find some relief. So the first is, once you get out, whether you separated or you retired, doesn't matter, you still have access to those TAP resources for up to a year out, whether that's through Military One Source or directly to the TAP resources, doesn't matter. But then on another level, if you're just not ready, if it didn't work for you, the Navy, Marine Corps, and Army have specific programs designed for you to apply for an extension of your term of service to get you through whatever the challenging period is. The Air Force is doing the same thing, but they're doing it through their existing policies that apply to how you withdraw a separation or you withdraw a retirement. So the bottom line is, for anyone in any one of the four services, there is a mechanism. If it just didn't work for them, if there's a challenge directly related to the current crisis, there's a method for them to apply and to get approval for an extension to stay in until such time as, in some places, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might be. Now, all that falls into just a full ecosystem that only works because all the people like you, Eric, Laura, Maureen, all the other people that will be talking today are out there doing great things beyond TAP that are the connectors. The elements that make TAP successful aren't the statutory pieces of TAP. That's the baseline information. But it's all the work that you're doing to ensure that we can allow people to go on with their lives. They don't have to put it on hold. But if there is a challenge, we've got those pieces in place. And I'll stop there.
That's terrific, Mike. And can I just ask a quick follow-up before I go on to Laura? If someone wants to take advantage of that, from one of the services, what's their best first stop?
Oh, absolutely. It's like every other personnel action that they want to do. Their first step is to their first line personnel officer. And so whether that's the Airmen and Family Service Center or whether that's your S1 in the Army or whatever that first stop is, but they've got the information that's specific to your service and to your circumstances that'll help you put in your application to continue and to extend your service. But it's going to be different. It's different by each service, and it'll be different by your circumstances. So it's important to simply start at that first point of contact, get the right information for you instead of guessing or assuming.
Great. And we'll get that guidance and we'll post it on the CMS website so folks can look for it and find it there. Laura, I'm delighted to introduce you. Could you say a little bit about what you do or about Booz Allen's actions? And then would love to know about what you all are seeing in Booz Allen in terms of hiring.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound great.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you for having me. I'm very proud that Booz Allen is a part of this coalition. I think everyone on this panel and in this coalition is doing great work and already having an incredible impact. So really good to be here. I am here to represent Booz Allen Hamilton. Booz Allen Hamilton is a global technology and consulting firm. We represent a broad array of clients in government as well as in the private sector. A majority of our work is with our defense and intelligence agencies and with Veterans Affairs. So these issues are all near and dear to our hearts. And we also have about a third of our employees who are military connected one way or another. So transition and employment of our military personnel is also an issue that we hold dear, and we'll do anything we can to help those transitioning veterans and spouses come and work for us or for somewhere in this economy. So what I can speak to a little bit is sort of the employer's point of view during this crisis. And I guess if I had one important message to share with the audience today, it's that if you're delaying not your transition, but delaying your job search or putting it off or putting off your transition activities because of this crisis, don't do that. There are employers out here who are hiring. It's very important that you prepare, probably even more so than usual, for your transition if you're a veteran and for your next job search if you're a spouse. And you just have to think about it a little bit differently and maybe do a little bit more research and research a little more strategically about where you're going to work. And while this isn't meant to be an all-inclusive list, I would just maybe offer a few suggestions for how to think about that. And the first place I think I would go if I was looking for work coming out of the military is to the essential personnel list that was just published by the Department of Homeland Security. I think it's a public document. You can go to the Department of Homeland Security website and find it, but I think we're going to share it after this town hall as a resource to everybody, and hopefully maybe it'll be up on the website as well. But there are many industries and careers that have been deemed essential by the federal government. You have to look at your state as well, because states have had different interpretations of that list. But the major buckets of essential industries and companies are in the things you would expect in this time, like health services, law enforcement, energy, transportation, cyber, defense, certain essential manufacturing. There's a very long list of potential industries that are still hiring and working during this time, or at least working during this time. So if you want to start somewhere, that might be a good place to start. The second place you could look, or you could think through what kinds of industries are actually seeing an increase in activity right now and are hiring. I'm sure a lot of you have read newspaper articles that Amazon is hiring or Walmart is hiring, and that's true. The health industry, absent hospitals, may not be hiring as much, but hospitals are still hiring. Pharmaceutical companies and pharmacies, supply chain, shipping, groceries, online work. All of those industries are seeing an increase right now because they're part of the response to this, and they're still serving people, and they're in demand more than ever. And the last list of industries I think I'd look for are the industries that aren't as affected by the crisis as some of the ones we've seen. Those are the technology industries, government, banking. So there's still, as you can hear, a lot of industries that you can look for in your transition search. Think about your skill sets, think about your interests, and maybe broaden your scope a little bit. And I'm not going to try to color this with rose-colored glasses or anything. It's a tough market out there. We have historic unemployment, but you have a great background. Employers still want to hire veterans and military spouses, and you shouldn't let that dissuade you from looking. For military spouses, I would say you're going to have to start planning even earlier than usual. I was a military spouse for 20 years. I know what that's like when you're looking at a PCS, but you have to start networking and looking at your next duty station and looking toward your AWS office or whatever it might be, even earlier than usual, to try to plan that next job search, even if it's just to see where you should be looking when you finally do PCS and those stop movement orders are lifted. If you want to try to make some lemonade out of lemons, I think the whole world is opening up to the idea of telework right now. I know Booz Allen is. We're all on a mandatory telework schedule now, except for our essential workers who are working on site. So perhaps you can talk to your employer about keeping your job and teleworking at your new duty station. That could be a possibility. Retention is very important now, more important than ever for military spouses, because it's going to be a tough job environment when those orders are lifted and everybody's moving. But I'm here to say that employers are still hiring. Booz Allen is still hiring among many of our sectors. So please don't give up, and good luck.
Thanks, Laura. That's great information and a great perspective. We have a lot of questions, so to try to get to them in a short period of time, I'm going to ask for just one person to take each of them. Starting off, I think this might be for Mike. Who maintains JKO in the TAP capacity? A lot of installations are being directed to JKO, but the information is old and outdated.
So DoD maintains the contract with JKO. Of course, JKO is a DoD server. And then each of the other agencies, Labor, VA, SBA, take and provide us their input that we put onto that platform. We are moving to a new platform in the fall, and that's one of the reasons, and they're actually right, that's why we're using these other formats, the other ways, whether it's through the 24/7 counseling that's available with your TAP counselors, or the other things that installations are doing in the virtual space, because JKO is not as up to date as our current curriculum, because we are moving to a new format. Timing is everything. Moving to a new format and a new server in the fall of this coming year.
Thank you. Eric, perhaps this will be for you. How should we handle quote unquote veteran-friendly companies that do not respond to online applications or provide decisions made on their employment opportunity?
Well, I think that I think as the responses to online applications have always been challenging. It was a challenge back in 2011. It was a challenge in 2015, and it was really it's going to be a challenge going forward. I think that from my perspective, and it's certainly how Hiring Our Heroes is really focused. Making those personal connections and finding ways to connect with employers so that it's not just a piece of paper is absolutely critical. And it's going to be of critical importance moving forward. We're going to go into a economic landscape where there are challenges. And the best thing that folks can do as we get into a tougher job market, at least in the near term, is to bridge that through connections and LinkedIn connections and in-person connections to really find those opportunities, because that's going to best guarantee a successful outcome. So I certainly think that to the extent that there are military-friendly employers that are not responding, it's always been a challenge depending on the number of applications those challenges are going to increase. But if the real advice is not to find a way to give some of those companies grief, but instead find a job, I'm going to tell everybody here on the call, everything you can do to either gain some level of personal experience, whether it's through a fellowship or an internship program, or to build out your LinkedIn or your network of connections, it's going to improve that likelihood of finding an opportunity.
That's great. Thanks. Maureen, can we expect the pandemic to impact educational and credentialing benefits, do you think?
So I think that at least on the education and credentialing side, that's an opportunity, not necessarily a negative one. I think that, as I mentioned, what we've seen on the education side, that at times of troubling economic times, folks turn to higher education for those opportunities. And obviously, transitioning service members have a benefit to be leveraged in that regard. And I think that there are colleges and universities, community colleges across the country that have built out programs specifically focused on military connected folks and ensuring that they have, sort of a level playing field as they transition into higher education. And I think the same could be said on the credentialing side. I think it's a unique opportunity to leverage credentialing programs like Onward to Opportunity, where you can take advantage of online learning, flexible to your schedule, get a free industry exam, and then be connected to employers. But there are certainly other online training programs that have those credentials. And I think, to Eric's point earlier, how do we best prepare transitioning service members, spouses, and veterans who might be displaced in this environment to give them a more robust package to deliver to a prospective employer? And I think the credentialing and some of these training programs, as well as higher education, can be helpful in that regard. So in my opinion, it creates an opportunity, particularly if we think about higher education.
That's terrific. And then our last question before we need to move on, does Booz Allen Hamilton offer any apprenticeship programs?
We have a very limited number of apprenticeship programs with DoD, but mostly where we get our sort of that type of employee is through hiring our Heroes Fellowship program. Both on the veteran side and the spouse side, we take on 6 and 12-week fellows, and we've had a lot of success with them. So we plan to continue that program even through all of this.
That's terrific. We have a lot of other great questions. We will send them out to, a lot of them are for Mike Miller. We'll send them out to Mike and to Eric and Maureen and Laura as they apply, and we'll get them posted for you. Thank you to all of our panelists for panel one. Really informative, really great conversation. I'd like to move forward now with our second panel, which will be moderated by Eric Eversole of Hiring Our Heroes. As we mentioned, Eric and his team have been overall organizing this entire town hall, and they have been key contributors to the White Oak Steering Committee for many years. We're happy to have them join us today as part of this important CMSI work. Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Kathy, and really excited about this second panel and the ongoing conversation around the impact of COVID-19 on our transitioning service members, veterans, and their families. We have a great group of panelists that are joining us here for this second part, and really looking forward to getting their insights. We do have a short period of time here, so I'm going to stop with much more discussion, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists to quickly introduce themselves and who they work for, and then we'll get right into the questions. So let me start with Colonel Ferris. And Colonel Ferris could be on mute. I'll get back to Colonel Ferris.
Okay, Eric, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
Well, there's a little bit of a lag there between the button and the mute. So, hey, first of all, I want to thank Kathy for the invitation to be on this panel and all of the organizations that provide outstanding services to soldiers, veterans, and families throughout the entirety of the life cycle. As Eric said, my name is Press Ferris. I'm the Director of Soldier for Life. I've been in that position about 18 months. And our mission is to identify, engage, and coordinate the efforts of government and non-government organizations that provide those services to soldiers, veterans, and families throughout the life cycle, not just during transition. So Eric, thanks for having us on the panel today. We certainly appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Prest. Mark Elliott, are you with us?
For hosting this. And are you hearing me okay, Eric?
We can, thank you.
Okay, great. Again, I want to just thank Kathy for hosting this. I think this is a very important town hall. And to you, Eric, for both your partnership on efforts like this, and to everyone else that's on the panel. Of course, JP Morgan Chase has been engaged in the veteran hiring for a number of years, piloted by Maureen, on the first panel. And so we want to stay engaged in this community and make sure that we are helping move these efforts forward. And so whether it's our leadership in the Veterans Job Mission or in many of the other areas that we focus on, we're just excited about being here. And despite the current crisis that we're under, we're optimistic about how we're going to emerge from this. So thank you for inviting me.
Great, thanks, Mark. Really glad you could join us. Boris, we're going to turn it over to you next. There we go. Boris? We'll come back to Boris. Chris, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Christopher Plamp. I'm with the USO as the Senior Vice President for Operations, Programs, and Entertainment. As such, the USO's transition program falls underneath me. Obviously, the USO is there as a nonprofit organization to support the military service members and their families throughout their careers. And part of that is that transition out of the military. And the USO's goal is to make sure that those service members are connected with the high quality programs, DoD programs, and corporations that support military hiring.
Great. Glad you could join us. Nathan Williamson, are you with us?
Hey, Eric. How you doing? Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me and the VA to join you. I'm Nathan Williamson from the Veterans Benefits Administration. And thanks for raising awareness as this coronavirus situation is going. Folks are still transitioning out of the military into permanent civilian life. We know transition is inherently stressful and creates anxiety, and it must be exacerbated right now with the coronavirus situation. The message I would like to convey to those who are transitioning out, those service members and their families, as well as those who have recently transitioned out, even before the coronavirus situation took hold. We recognize that you are still transitioning, and I would like to say that VA is still open for business and still supporting thousands of transitioning service members or recently separated veterans every day. Our hospitals are still open. We are still processing claims. We're still reviewing appeals. The National Cemetery Administration is still honoring veterans with dignity. Mental health care is still available. We are not reducing anybody's benefits. If anybody hears otherwise, that is false. And while we have had to implement some protocols in accordance with CDC guidelines for social distancing, we are doing a lot of things virtually, and I look forward to discussing those on this panel.
Great, thank you, Nathan. Let's see if Boris is online now. Boris, do we have you?
Yes, Eric. Appreciate having technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you.
Yep. I appreciate everybody's connection issues. And my name is Boris Kuhn. I work for Department of Defense in the credentialing program. Specifically, we look forward to speaking to SkillBridge, our employment programs, how we towards the transitioning of service members to include spouses and under National Guard and reservists for employment. So, thank you for me, especially during this time.
Thank you, Boris, and thanks for joining us. We heard from really the first panel and really insightful first panel talking really about some of the near-term challenges that we've seen that transitioning service members and their family members and veterans are going to face from the current COVID-19 crisis and the economic crisis that is really tailing right along with it. But one of the things that I mentioned earlier in that call was that a lot of the structure and programs that are in place now didn't exist back in 2011 when we were facing a different economic challenge. And really talking about those programs and the safety nets that have been created, I think are really important to setting the stage for how the private and public partners that have been created are going to address the upcoming challenges. And let me start out by really turning it over to our resident Soldier for Life with the first question to Colonel Ferris. What is the Army, what's Soldier for Life telling its soldiers and its families about the near-term economic crisis and what they should be thinking about and what they should do?
Well, hey, Eric, thanks for that. You know, really, when I think about transitioning in the time of COVID, there's really two things that you've got to do. And the first one is clear the service, right? So I call that clear the Army as a soldier. And that's just the administrative tasks that you have to do to be able to separate from the service itself. And that's some of the things we heard from the first panel, right? So those things that, like you got to complete the DA mandated TAP, you've got to complete your medical appointments, you've got to get your household goods scheduled. If you're going to PCS, you got to get orders. And every bit of that is made more challenging by the social distancing and the dispersed workforce that we're experiencing today. But I will tell you, I just got off a panel with the DAS. There was a panel yesterday with the Vice, and the Army is going to get after that, and MCOM is getting after that. And those services are available. Soldiers just need to be a little bit more patient. You'd be willing to do that virtually, willing to do some of that via email, some of that through other means. So that is out there. You know, if you look at the slide, I think I don't own TAP, but I sure wish I did because it's a phenomenal program to be sure. HRC is continuing to run TAP. MCOM is executing TAP at the garrison levels every single day to get that piece of Clear the Army done. And they're doing it in a number of different ways. Virtual interviews, online interviews, social distancing interviews and classes. And then finally, if you have to, the virtual center, the Army maintains a 24/7 virtual center. It's been augmented for this period. And then if you absolutely have to, you can go and you can use the JKO where there's a little lack of human interface. Retirement Services Office is part of Soldier for Life as well. The Army has got a very robust virtual retirement services capability today. The ALO Act on how we're doing that came out earlier this week. So if you are retiring, then you can absolutely do that virtually anywhere from receiving the retirement services briefing, which is mandatory, to your SPP election counseling and all of those things that are associated with retirement. So I am also a transitioning soldier. So I will be leaving the Army here in September. So I mean, I'm part of that group that thought I had a lot of time and thought I had a lot of things that I was going to do in the next 6 months that have absolutely changed. And so kind of here's my advice for all the soldiers out there that are transitioning. First, maximize technology. Look, if you're my age and this Zoom and teleconferencing things are kind of new to you in the last few years, you got to embrace that. I've been to several virtual job fairs. I've put some profiles out on things that ordinarily I probably wouldn't have participated in as a face-to-face person. So you've got to embrace that technology in your transition, take advantage of all those organizations like you heard from in panel one. Hey, two is utilize your network, right? So we know that we hear this all the time, right? People get jobs through the network. So you got to be able to go out there and you got to be able to find those people and you got to be able to talk to them. You're just gonna have to do it a little bit differently. So instead of sitting down and having coffee, maybe it's a Zoom call, maybe it's just a regular phone call. You know, maybe you yell at somebody across the yard, whatever it is that works for you. You got to stay in touch with that network. Somebody said in the first panel, you cannot stop. You got to keep networking. And lastly is maximize these external partners, right? So like I said, virtual job fairs are springing up all over the place. There's virtual training that's going on online. There's a number of seminars. I mean, you know, Eric, you guys are hosting a bunch there at Hiring Our Heroes. They're all fantastic. You got to continue to maximize those people in the private sector that are bringing value to your transition process. Take time to upskill. I think like Maureen said earlier, you know, I'm working on a program right now through O2O for PNP. A lot of my peers are doing that as well. Take a little bit of that time when you're home from work and you're separated, and you know you take that 2 hours you would commute every day in the Washington D.C. area and put that towards upskilling. Take a class, get a credential, do something to make yourself a little bit more ready as you go. And then lastly, it's delay your transition. Like you know, as Mike said in panel one, the Army has got a process in place today where enlisted soldiers can delay their ETS from the service anywhere from 3 to 11 months, and then they can also choose to reenlist. The option is also available for officers to withdraw their separation actions as well. But and I'll tell you this, and the DAF said this today too. Look, if you meet the standards, the Army would love to keep you, right? So if you're not comfortable transitioning in this time of uncertainty, and you're not comfortable transitioning in this time of downcline in the economy, then hey, by all means, consider staying in the Army. So again, that's kind of a combination, Eric, of kind of what the Army's putting out and kind of my personal experiences on transitioning during this time of COVID.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and I think that's some really good insight. As we've heard and talked about it, I think one of those things is, the planning process that you're going through is really the planning process that transitioning service members should go through in general. But it seems like COVID-19 is just one additional factor that you have to consider, but it shouldn't change the planning process. So thanks for that insight. Let me turn it over to another program that wasn't in place back in 2011 or really until 2013 and beyond, and that's the SkillBridge program. And Boris, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how DoD is leveraging SkillBridge as we move into this economic recovery time period here in the very near future, and what are your prospects on that?
Sure. No, thank you, Eric. So first of all, we're making adjustments right now as we speak with COVID. As Colonel Ferris pointed out too, we're even allowing the flexibility of taking more than one opportunity during this time right now, because some service members might have looked and had a prospective opportunity, and now that future employer is not hiring. So we made those flexibilities. We put those flexibilities in place from the OSD level and passed it on to our services to execute their mission requirements and flexibility, and made it available to our reservists as well. We started reaching out to our employer partners pretty fast, and especially with partner in government. We recent FY20 NDA, we received authority to partner with federal partners and agencies. And we have 5 on board, and VA being one of them. So they're hiring heavily right now to support COVID, and we're doing everything we can there. And the big thing we're doing within SkillBridge is expanding the opportunity for spouses to participate with employer partners who are interested in spouses as well. So even though, yes, we have a spouseless program office, SkillBridge is its own brand. And just like Hiring Our Heroes has a spousal program, that way it's easier to communicate through our offices here. We're all about collaborating as well. And opening it up to our reservists and guardsmen, just because they came in, we're trying to leverage our partnerships to get employment opportunities for our Guard and Reserve, especially during this time of need and in the future during the recovery of our economy. A lot of times we provide world-class training to our Guard and Reserve, and they go out there with that world-class training and end up working at, I'll put in a local theater or doing some kind of job or occupation that's not really related to those skill sets that we train them in. So we're looking to see how we can leverage our partnerships to have our readiness better, but also help the economy in its recovering stages to assist there. That's a big part there that we're doing with SkillBridge on that end, but also just SkillBridge is open, and a lot of, just like I mentioned before, we were very surprised, and I think this is a different time in 2020 versus the last time we had a recession or the Great Recession. And as you mentioned, Eric, it's great having partners that are hiring, but also virtual hiring sessions, but also virtual training opportunities. Many of our partners went virtual, and they're offering their employment training online and make commitments to continue hiring, especially on most of the Fortune 500 companies. So that's a great signal. So yes, our economy took a pause right now, but we at least know and have a good feeling that our veterans are valued, and it's a different, I would say it's a different time today than it was 12 years ago, and that's because of the great advocacy we've had with all of our partners that are on this line today, and all the work that's been going on and will continue. The big thing that came out about 6 months ago, I had a good conversation with our undersecretary. Like, why should we continue funding this program? The economy is great. The question is not when the economy is great. We have to be ready for the time when the economy is not great. So the continuation of these programs is vital, not during the battle times, because when the times like these hit, it's when you want to have these programs already in place. So it's a normal thing, and everything is running, and you can start executing the emergency plan. So absolutely agree, and thank you for everybody who's on the line and who's participating or listening. So we value everybody's commitment and participation and engagement.
Great. Thank you, Boris. Nathan, you mentioned that the VA is open for business, and obviously that's great to hear. Let's talk a little bit about what the VA is doing from an economic development perspective.
Hey, thanks for that, Eric. Yeah, first, if I can't convey any message, I hope everybody's got a pen and paper out. There's 2 points I want everybody to write down. One, if you need any information from the VA, please go to our website, www.va.gov. At the top of the webpage, everything related to the coronavirus situation will be put into a banner, but the VA website is the most accurate and trustworthy site to go to for anything related to the VA. And two, if you've got doubts, you don't know where to start, you've got questions, call us. Please give us a call. You can call us at 1-800-827-1000. That is 1-800-827-1000. And for those who are transitioning out or recently transitioned, you can also help us keep in touch with you by ensuring that your information in va.gov or eBenefits is up to date. Please make sure that you update that with your personal email and phone number. That again is ebenefits.va.gov. And now I want to get into, Eric, as you mentioned, some of the ways that VA is assisting folks virtually. I got some information on the next slide here for you that will help. So first and foremost, many folks who are about to apply for a GI Bill or recently done so and have it now, many of the institutes of higher learning have moved to 100% virtual instruction. Your GI Bill payments are unaffected by this. You will still get paid the same benefit you had as if you were going in person. The coronavirus situation will not affect your benefit. Educational and career counseling services have gone 100% virtual, using existing technology that's already available even before the coronavirus. Thanks to vocational rehabilitation and employment modernization that's been implemented by our director, Will Streitberger, who is also a Navy veteran and went through voc rehab himself, VRNE is able to do a lot of the counseling that it already does in person via telecounseling. And now this is something that is important to those who are about to get out or recently got out. A lot of questions in our pain point survey that Kathy mentioned at the beginning asked about this. We've had to adjust the in-person compensation and pension, the CMP exams. They've been moved into a virtual environment, meaning no in-person pen exams are being done. So we're doing what we're calling tele-CMP exams, or acceptable clinical evidence. I would like for everybody to know, and please spread this out, that if by chance you happen to get a call from one of the VA vendors telling you to come in for an in-person exam, please remind them that VA is not doing this. They should know that. We've communicated the message. Tell them that they're not doing that, and please call that 1-800 number, 1-800-827-1000, and let us know so we can track down the vendor on that situation. Also, we know that this situation might delay you being able to file for your disability compensation. And if you are, we're providing extensions and exemptions. So if you're not able to run down information and you need to file your claim and it's going to be late, not a problem. Submit the documentation whenever you can and just put a note on it that this was due to the coronavirus, and we will accept it late without any additional proof required. Also, if you need to file a claim and you can't, it's important that you need to tell us your intent to file. And what that means is you want to file, but you can't right now. So please call us again at 1-800-827-1000 and let us know that you intend to file. And when you call us, we will honor the date that you called us, even if you can't start filing right now. Finally, just going into the Transition Assistance Program real quick, we have gone 100% virtual. The first panel had a question related to JKO about the content being old and outdated. I would like to reassure everybody that VA has invested a lot of resources into the JKO virtual curriculum to make sure it is as equal of an opportunity to get connected to your VA benefits and services as if you were going through an in-person class. These are offered online on JKO for credit for those service members who need so to complete their necessary steps to meet their career readiness standards. But we also make it available with our interagency partners on JKO access for free. If you get lost, go to the website below, benefits.va.gov/transition, and active links will be provided to get you to that curriculum. I will mention, Eric, that the curriculum that we offer on JKO, we developed way before the coronavirus. Our intent was for those who are actively deployed into operational combat situations to be able to have the same experience that their folks back in the States would be able to have as much as possible. And in fact, over the last 3 years, close to 180,000 folks have taken for credit that JKO course with resounding success. And then finally, I'd like to leave you all with a final tidbit. When you have gotten out, VA will be reaching out to you. Just because you've left the military service does not mean that your transition experience has ended. So VA will be calling you. Everybody who gets out, regardless of character of discharge, will be reached out to by the VA 3 times in that first year separation. I encourage everybody, and please spread this message, save this number in your phone as the VA Solid Start. VA Solid Start will be reaching out to you, and a qualified VA call center agent will be discussing any benefit and service that you may be eligible. But it's your phone call. Do your homework. Go through the VA TAP course on JKO. Go to va.gov. Understand the benefits and services available to you. But just know that when VA calls you after you get out, it's us. Please take the call. With that, I turn it back to you, Eric.
Great. Thanks, Nathan. And thanks for that overview and everything that the VA is doing on behalf of our veterans and their families. You know, one of the things that was mentioned, of course, was, you know, some of the private and public partnerships and how the myriad of service organizations can really be of service during this crisis. So, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you for this next question. What are your recommendations for service organizations about how they can best continue to serve their populations, and what the USO has been doing to meet those needs?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I appreciate the time being here today. I think it's been stated, and it's kind of a theme on this panel, on the fact that it is not what it was a decade ago or 5 years ago. And I think that's very true in the nonprofit space, on the fact of there's now a lot of partnerships between the different nonprofits that work in the transition space. This is critical because every nonprofit has what it does very, very well. And it also has ones where it might need help, or another nonprofit does that better. And in that case, the best thing to do is to work collaboratively between all the different nonprofits so that we end up providing the best holistic care that we can for the transitioning service member. So I think what all the organizations can do right now that would benefit the most is to continue to grow and then utilize these partnerships that have been formed over the last 5 to 10 years to really provide better care for the individual getting out. You know, whether it's your organization with Hiring Our Heroes, whether it's O2O, whether then we go into the government organizations with SkillBridge or TAP, whether it's a company that's doing hiring such as Booz Allen, whether it's our Pathfinder program that's trying to link up with the transitioning military member early in their career, either before or after they've been through TAP, and then make sure they get connected to these quality programs that are out there that can help them. All of us working together is going to be the key to be providing that care as the individual is transitioning out, especially in this time where they're transitioning out to, you know, a recovering economy and a very high unemployment number. This is when all the partnerships and coordination and panels like this that we've done over the last 5 to 6 years, I think are really going to pay off. And I think the transitioning service member, if we all continue to work well together, is going to get dividends from that.
Thanks, Christopher. I had some great insight and really appreciate what you all are doing. This last question, and then we'll turn it over to some questions, but this last question obviously is for you, Mark. and really want to hear, from the great coalition of companies that you've created through the Veterans Job Mission. What are you seeing from your lens, both at JP Morgan, but also through this coalition of companies of what companies are doing to help service members and their families through this transition?
Yeah, Eric, thank you for the question. And, the first thing I would say is, all of the panelists that preceded me really do have the recipe for how you can be successful during a transition, whether you're taking advantage of pre-separation activities that are available to our veterans or our servicemen and women, or you're tapping into those programs that have been serviced. As I kind of listen to the different conversations that are happening in corporate America, I think, Laura said it best. We're still open for business, and we still recognize the quality talent that is in our service, men and women. And so when we want that talent, prior to this crisis, there was a shortage of employers or employees that we could tap into. So that is going to be true as we emerge from this. I think the message I get from leaders across our firm and across other firms is we are going to get back to some sense of normalcy. It may not be exactly what we were familiar with before. I think it was discussed a little bit earlier about the concept of telework. There is the group of chief HR professionals that have conversations on a regular basis, during the crisis. And one of the things that they've talked about is they believe we've moved this concept of telework forward about 5 years. So what does that mean? Well, when you're talking about things like hiring our spouses, that was always a barrier for our spouses because they moved around a lot. Well, this new environment may create opportunities for our spouses to gain access to jobs and opportunities that maybe prior to this they may not have been able to take advantage of. And so I think we have to be very, very aware of opportunities like that and make sure that we're positioning those individuals in the best possible way. When you talk about things like SkillBridge, where there was a barrier to how do you take advantage of SkillBridge if you're not in the right locale, well, I think that's going to open up opportunities for us in the future. And I think we have to prepare our servicemen and women to take advantage of those things and to make sure that they understand, how to tap into things like that. I think as we emerge from this thing, I do believe that companies are going to be hiring because they recognize that our veterans are going to bring a unique skill set and experience. I think one of the things that I hear on a regular basis is the level of appreciation that people are starting to have for the sacrifices that our servicemen and women, exemplify every day. When you hear what some of our healthcare workers and our first responders are doing, that's very similar to the sacrifices that our servicemen and women have, been, exemplifying day in and day out. And I think it opens up a different mindset for people these days. So we're excited about it. You talked about the coalition. As I talk to our coalition partners, they're expressing a desire to continue to hire and to continue to hire those quality, servicemen and women who demonstrate day in and day out the value that they bring to our companies. So, I'm looking forward to any questions about this, but I think the message is we're open for business, and we're gonna continue to, make sure that we tap into that military, live servicemen and women who can just do amazing things inside our companies.
Well, great, Mark. And I want to be mindful of everyone's time. So as Kathy mentioned, we're going to get through the questions and we'll send them around and make sure that we, for each of the folks who have put questions in, we will do our best to get answers. But for the sake of everyone's time, we're going to skip verbal questions now, but I do want to just reiterate something that I thought, a couple of good points to kind of close this panel that I think are worth making very quickly. And to Mark's point, 2 points. One, this country's still open for business. We have a lot of great companies out there that are committed to not only hiring America's best and brightest, but their view is that our service members and their families are definitely the best and brightest. So don't lose sight of that in the near term. I think it's easy to attack, be consumed by what's happening in the near term in the nightly news. But America's business partners are committed to our service members and their families. There's no doubt about that. And the second thing that I don't think we can overemphasize is the issue that every time our country has faced adversity, we've come out of it bigger and stronger and better every time. And certainly with this current situation, it is creating unprecedented challenges. But to Mark's point, it is opening pathways and new pathways to do business that's going to make us better and create more opportunities for all Americans, regardless of their background. So really honored to help moderate this incredible panel. And thank you to each and every one of you for your insights. And Kathy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Eric, and thanks to our panelists. Really a fantastic town hall overall. It's wonderful to see what happens when we create this kind of cross-sector collaboration between the nonprofits, the government, and the business community all pulling together. I do want to acknowledge how terrific the military services have been. 2 weeks ago, our nonprofit collaborative identified this concern about transition and allowing people the dignity of being able to choose their transition date, even if they had planned to transition during this time. We presented a little petition with the help of Hiring Our Heroes, American Legion, TAPS, Military Officers Association, and a number of others to the Secretary of Defense and to some of the military services. The Army was the first to become more flexible, and the other services then did follow. And it's gratifying to see how responsive the military services and the Department of Defense have been to the concerns of our service members and their families and veterans during this challenging time. Not to minimize what Eric and Mark and Laura all said about the real possibilities of successful transitions. We just want families to be able to choose with comfort. I want to remind everyone attending today to please check your email following this town hall, to take a moment to take the survey so we can choose our next topics and we can continue to improve. Also, please take that pain point poll so that we can continue to bring those top issues to nonprofits and government partners. Today, thanks to the support of Booz Allen Hamilton, we're able to make the leap to our veteran community, and we encourage all currently serving veterans and their families to take the pain points poll. Now, back over to you, Matt, for some next steps.
Thanks, Kathy. I'd like to invite everyone to join us next Tuesday at 3 o'clock for our next town hall entitled Working as One Community, How Army Installations, States, and Local Governments Are Working Together to Respond to COVID-19. This panel will feature several garrison commanders from across the country, and along with their state, local, and community counterparts, talking about the very real things that are going on the ground and how they're working together to address that. In the meantime, as Kathy mentioned, be sure to check out the website. It's full of resources to help you and your family and your business during this time. We'll be updating the website with the questions that were asked here today and identifying answers for those. So thanks again, and we look forward to welcoming you at a future webinar.